Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much to the Academy for allowing me to come here and present my work today. I'm going to be presenting on a survey that I did where I asked people with cerebral palsy and their families what they thought about genomic research and data sharing. So the reason that I did this survey was because, one, it actually hasn't been done yet before in a population with a disability, and secondly, I'm actually a member of the International Cerebral Palsy Genomics Consortium, and a big part of my work in that group is contributing by building a data sharing platform, which means that we have to have a lot of consensus by the families that they're going to be happy that we're going to share their data. So this was a survey that I developed with 3 consumers from our consumer work group at the Cerebral Palsy Alliance, which is called CP Quest. It was an online survey that was delivered by via RedCap, and it was distributed through a number of different organisations and social media outlets, including the CP Register in Australia, CP Daily Living, Reaching for the Stars, and CP Now. So most of the people that actually responded to my survey are from the United States and Australia. Okay, so straight into the data. Would you be willing to donate a biological sample for a CP genetic study? Was obviously one of the major questions that we want to ask. We want to know who the people are that are interested in being involved in these genetic studies, and are we actually capturing a real cross-section of the entire true CP cohort? Well, we got 66% of our survey respondents said yes, they would be willing to join into a CP genetic study. And of those people, we then had a look at what kind of characteristics and traits from their demographics were associated with those people. So we found that willingness to participate was not associated with gender, it was not associated with age, country of residence, or whether or not a person identified as having CP, being a parent, a sibling, or a carer. Willingness to participate in a CP genetic study, however, was associated with education. So those that are more highly educated were more likely to be willing to participate in a CP genetic study. Similarly, we asked a battery of questions around genomic literacy. So we asked people whether or not they were familiar with terms like DNA, gene, genome, and whether or not those people were familiar and comfortable with those terms, they would then answer, and we based that on how aware they were of genomics. Those people that felt more comfortable with those terms were also more willing to participate in one of these studies. Similarly, we had 25% of our cohort that had previously been in a genetic test, either through commercial or clinical or research environment, and that was also positively associated with an increased association of willing to participate. The strongest trait, however, was actually trust in international researchers. So I guess for me, being part of an international consortium, this is pretty positive, but also probably a little scary considering if they don't trust us, they don't want us to do anything with them. So next, data sharing. We also wanted to know who would be willing to share and if they would actually be happy to contribute that data into a database. So we asked, would you be willing to share your de-identified data? And about 96% of those that were willing to participate in a study said that they would be. We also asked who those people thought should be able to have access to that de-identified data, and approximately 70% of people that said that they would be willing to share their de-identified data were happy with it being shared in an international, with the international research community rather than their home country alone. A major aspect of secondary data use in genomics is that a data access committee or an ethics committee usually approves data access for groups. The participant really doesn't ever have much say in who accesses their data once they've agreed to allow it to be used. And so we wanted to see how families felt about that as well. So we asked them, would you agree to an ethics committee deciding on your behalf who may access your de-identified data? And again, approximately 70% of respondents said that yes, they would be happy with someone else deciding on their behalf who could access that data. Communication. So obviously they've deferred their opportunity to be able to say who may or may not access their data, but we also wanted to know if research participants were quite interested with who was accessing that data and what they were doing with it. So we asked a couple of questions around that, and I'll just present these results here. So would you like to be informed every time someone accessed your de-identified data? As anyone, as a data manager, you might know that's quite a difficult task, but apparently 60% of our respondents who are pretty excited about this work really want to be told who's accessing their data. We also wanted to know what research participants had an expectation in terms of how regularly they were communicating with researchers. I've got to admit, I was pretty astounded by this response because I definitely don't follow what my research participants are potentially trying to tell me in this survey. But how regularly would you like researchers to communicate with you throughout the duration of your research study? And nearly 50% wanted to be reached out, have the researchers reach out to them every 1 to 3 months. So, obviously, genetic studies, a lot of people really want to be able to get their genetic results, so this is obviously quite a common question that are asked in these kind of surveys. These results actually reflect what's also seen in the general population when these questions have been asked, or in cancer cohorts or rare disease cohorts. Overwhelmingly, research participants really want to know their results. We also asked what kind of results, and we explained the different breakup of the different types of results. So if they were medically actionable, or if they were, would only tell the family about their CP and maybe be used for reproductive management, or if they wanted all their results. And you can see here that all the families really particularly wanted to be able to get pretty much all their results. So in conclusion, people with CP and their families are really interested in this kind of work, and they really want to be involved in genetic studies. However, I am a little worried that currently we may be recruiting a population that is not representative of the true CP community. And I think that realistically, what this means is that we actually probably need to spend a little bit more time engaging with our consumers, understanding what they need. Clearly, from this survey, we can see that it's quite diverse, and I've only given you a really high level of all the data that I've captured. It was an 80-question survey, so it was quite extensive. Communication, obviously, it's got very different needs. Some people really wanted to be communicated with every 1 to 3 months. Others obviously only wanted to be hearing from the researchers at the end of the research project. And realistically, we want to boost up that health literacy, and with that, we hope that it'll increase the trust in the international research community. Thank you.
Any question? Yeah.
Hey. Hi, Richard.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. So, as you know, there are rare families that might have a stronger genetic predisposition than others, perhaps families with multiple affecteds throughout the pedigree. Did you get any sense whether members of families like that might be more or less concerned about participating based on the idea that what they find out about their own genome might influence decision-making by their relatives?
Yes, I did ask questions about families and whether or not they were aware that their genetic information would also have implications for extended family members. And again, the numbers were quite high. People were quite aware that, yes, the information would implicate, but they still wanted the information. Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher?
Sorry, so I want to see anyone out there.
Is there any comparative data from the literature on monogenic diseases such as neuromuscular disorders, where there's also lots more communication to families on genetics via, well, all the genetic research that has been done over the last 2 decades? Yeah, because cerebral palsy genetic research is, I'd say, emerging, and there isn't that culture of communicating with families via family associations.
So are you asking if we're hoping to have some sort of systems that we can implement?
It's basically, yeah, I mean, in neuromuscular disorders, Duchenne, etc., there's that long, I mean, communication with families around genetics via the associations has been long running. Should we be doing the same with cerebral palsy? I'd say in terms of public communication, genetics is not touched upon much, at least not here in Europe.
Yes. Well, I do know that there is another session that will be touching on communicating with families. I do think that genetic health literacy really needs to be increased in the across cerebral palsy research in general. And I do know that even when I talk to some of my friends that are clinicians that maybe obstetricians, if I say what I do, they're sort of like, but cerebral palsy doesn't have a genetic component. So I definitely think that it's not only that we're trying to raise awareness in the public, I definitely think that we can raise awareness ourselves as health researchers, as clinicians, as allied health specialists.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.